Hey, aloha, and welcome to Stan Energy Man here on ThinkTech Hawaii. And we're trying something a little bit different today. There's a show that I've been wanting to kind of go back and revisit for a long time. It's all the way from back in 2016, in October, as a matter of fact. And it's talking about a subject that I really want to do more in-depth discussion on, and that's critical thinking. I just don't think that as a society, we've really thought much in depth about some of the decisions that our government's making and things that we're doing, even in energy. This show talks a little about critical thinking and kind of gives you an idea of where it fits in the energy discussion, especially around energy storage. So I wanted to rerun this show and let you see. Plus, I found some of the data that I didn't have for the last show, and I inserted it in this one. So let's run the old show, and I hope you catch up a little bit on it and get more out of it this time.
Hey, welcome to Stan Energy Man on the 14th of October, 2016. Stan Osserman here from the Hawaii Center for Advanced Transportation Technologies, State of Hawaii DBED. And this is going to be kind of a different show. I just came off of 2 weeks on the road, so I'm a little bit jet lagged. And as you can see, sans guest, I have no guest today. But I'm going to start off a little bit on the philosophical side before we get into the energy side. And it kind of goes in line with this year's political season, which, in case you hadn't noticed, is squirrely, to say the least. So let me talk a little bit about one of the things that I've noticed that happens to dovetail into politics, but sure hits me smack between the eyes in terms of energy. And that would be the area of critical analysis. It seems to me that we have either stopped teaching critical analysis, or we have stopped thinking critical analysis, or we have been actually manipulated into not applying critical analysis in a lot of the things that we do. I noticed this probably 2006 or 2007. I think it was like in a midterm election. And I turned on and was flipping through the channels, watching all of the pundits talk about the political race at hand. And the first thing out of their mouth was, and this candidate has raised this much money, and this candidate has raised this much money, and therefore they will win. And I'm going, since when did we just start talking about how much money somebody raised? Like, is this a popularity contest? And then it hit me. No, it has to do with how much advertising they're doing, how much marketing they're doing. We've been trained over the last 20 to 30 years, maybe a little bit longer, into being consumers, good capitalistic consumers. And as a result, the industry, the advertising industry, and now the political industry has said, you know what, we need to do marketing. And so therefore, the more money a candidate raises, the more money they can spend on commercials and advertising, good, bad, or otherwise, to promote themselves or to tear down somebody else. And it's become marketing. So we really actually don't worry that much about the actual qualifications or capabilities of a candidate. We're kind of just worried about how well they're marketed. And we're looking at advertising only. And why is that? We've gotten busy. We've gotten really busy. So we take our information in sound bites, and we tend to take it at face value and agree with it or reject it in a fairly short amount of time. We're busy trying to make decisions all day long about what to have for dinner, what to wear to work, you know, what kind of car to buy, what this, what that. And I think it's just kind of made us poor at analyzing real facts that pertain to whatever it is we're doing. And in the political sense, maybe that applies this year, where we've got two candidates running for president that, to say the least, are not very popular and probably have some serious character flaws on both sides. But they're there. How did they get there? I think it's because we haven't done any serious analysis, in-depth analysis. So what does that mean for the energy side? And that is one of the most important questions I always get when I start talking hydrogen vehicles or hydrogen fuel cell vehicles is, why do we want to go with hydrogen-powered electric vehicles instead of just battery-powered electric vehicles? And normally the discussion that comes across right away is how much energy in for how much energy out. Batteries are more efficient than hydrogen, so therefore discussion over, batteries win. And I go, not so fast. Batteries may be the best energy in and energy out, but where's our critical analysis? What have we really done to decide whether or not batteries are the best choice? Now, I actually had a slide for this part of the discussion, and it didn't translate well in the computers here. I guess I must have saved it the wrong way or something. But basically, it was a slide that had on the horizontal axis, it had power. So it had the power from 1 watt to gigawatts. And on the vertical axis, it had time from milliseconds to weeks. And the reason this chart was so important was because it actually showed in little ovals the different kind of energy storage and where it fit on the scale of power to time. And what you notice is in the lower, it would be the lower left-hand scale over here on the TV, it would show that if you needed to store energy that was required in a quick time, the best storage medium was a supercapacitor. In other words, it's like a super battery that stores energy, holds onto it, and can release a large amount of it in a really quick millisecond type response, but it didn't last more than a second or 2 seconds. It was only meant for a really short duration, but it could give you potentially a pretty good boost up into the hundreds of watts to kilowatts size chunks. Above that, you have your traditional batteries, which cover a pretty broad area. They cover out to multi kilowatts, up to megawatts even, and give you hours, minutes to hours on the time scale. Above those batteries, you have flow batteries, which can give you actually out to days of time and fairly high on the power output, maybe even up to into the megawatt range, several megawatt range. Above that, the batteries just drop off. All of them do, even the flow batteries. And you get into other ovals that talk about things like compressed air storage, where if you have big salt caverns under your city or in your suburbs, you can actually compress air, put it into those salt cavities and have compressed air for energy storage. Or if you have the capacity to pump water up a hill and put it into a reservoir and it comes back down and give you energy as the water comes downhill. The distance above your level that the water is and how much you can get through the pipe determines how much energy you can get back. But those energy storage forms give you high into the multi-megawatt scale and long duration. However much compressed air or how much water you can store uphill can give you long duration of energy after the fact, even at high energy levels. In that same realm are some things like natural gas storage and fuel cells and hydrogen. And that's why when I have the discussion with battery people and they say it's only energy in and energy out, they're not really looking at that chart and where you're talking about. It's true that across the board, you're going to get the best bang for the buck energy-wise in and out with a battery. But if you're looking at storing energy for days, hours, days, weeks, or months, batteries are not your choice. Batteries will cost you more. Batteries are not as safe. Batteries have other issues with recycle and end of life, disposal, things like that that are never ever brought into the discussion on energy storage. And that's where I get back to the point of, are we really doing critical analysis, especially on the energy side? So I just want to talk a little bit about what I mean by critical analysis. First of all, you have to talk about the cradle to grave costs. You have to talk about the things that are built in that maybe we don't have to pay for, but maybe we're going to another country and buying it cheaper, like labor. A lot of countries don't have unions. A lot of countries don't mind paying their people 50 cents an hour or 15 cents an hour or just 10 cents an hour. And they don't care. For them, that's a good living. For us, it's projecting poverty in a third world country that we're trying to pull out of the third world. So just because we can buy it cheaper in some other country and cause them to keep their people down in the ghettos, does that make it right? No, maybe we should be looking at what it really costs and what we should really be doing in that country to not pollute their environment, not cause their economic suspension of growing and increasing the quality of life for their own people, maybe not putting their people at risk when people have to go into mines or have to do something that's inherently dangerous, and we're pushing that off to some other country because, well, they don't care. Their government doesn't regulate that stuff. They apparently don't care about their people. Is there a conscious part of our critical decision making other than dollars and cents that we need to put into the equation. Maybe we should tolerate paying a little bit more to help that country come up a little bit more. So where you get your resources, where you get your raw materials and your labor plays a lot into your critical analysis. At least it should. If you have a conscience, it should. How long does it last? If you have a piece of technology and it works really great for 5 or 6 years, but then you have to scrap it down to zero and start from scratch, is that as good as a similar product that maybe costs a little bit more initially or doesn't give you quite the return on the short-term investment, but it lasts 20 or 30 or 40 years and it doesn't have an environmental impact in your country or wherever you're getting the materials from? There's that aspect to consider as well. Then there's the question of, what about when we dispose of it? I mean, just think about what you see on a little battery pack, even just your rechargeable Everready or Duracell batteries. They tell you don't throw it in the fire, don't throw it in the rubbish. You're supposed to recycle those things so that the hazardous material in batteries can be eliminated before it goes into a landfill and starts polluting your water. So there's another point. When people don't dispose of this technology properly and they do throw it in the landfill and it does pollute your water, what's that worth to you? Is that a risk that you want to take as a society, that a technology that you're putting into your system that isn't handled according to what the law says, that it's going to end up polluting the drinking water of your kids and things like that? This is all part of critical analysis and really taking a good hard look at what you're doing when you decide on a certain technology or a certain type of any decision, political decision or otherwise. Are you really looking deep enough? So let's compare apples to apples as closely as we can. And let's look at some of the more important things. I'm gonna switch now for a few seconds to talk a little bit about lithium batteries. I'm completely aware that lithium is one of the better battery technologies that we've come up with. You don't have a cell phone or a small appliance or battery or a notebook or a tablet that doesn't have a lithium battery in it. And that's for good reason. They're very efficient and their weight is right. The cost is a little bit high, but it gives you great performance. Lithium batteries tend to perform really well until they're dead and then they drop off. Unlike a car battery that just slowly drops off until it's down to where it's not usable. Lithium batteries have a wider range in how far they can drop before they're not usable. They're just really great technology. So it's not that I'm ho-hum on lithium batteries. Trust me, they're the best we got, and that's why you see them in all the appliances. But they're not the whole answer. The topic today is critical analysis in energy storage. And we kind of got to the point where we're going to talk a little bit about the most popular battery, especially for appliances and small appliances and computers and things, the lithium ion battery particularly. Now there's all kind of lithium batteries too, by the way. There's not just lithium ion rather, there's lithium iron phosphate. You really need to look at what the battery is going to do and what are some of the characteristics of it. For example, my friends in the Big Island that are using the Sony lithium iron phosphate, and I think Panasonic and a couple other companies are using this technology as well. They have a great technology there that doesn't have the thermal issues with running away temperature-wise when they charge and discharge. They are super cool. They don't raise the temperature in your house. If you're air conditioning your house, you're not killing it when you're charging your battery by giving off waste heat. You've got cost is a little bit higher, but it's actually going to last you longer. The cycles will last you much longer. It has a better recharge regime where it doesn't have that storage memory like the old nickel metal hydride or other batteries that are rechargeable. Sometimes they have a memory. If you let them discharge only part way and then recharge them, sometimes you can actually kill some of the memory in the batteries. But lithium overall is a real interesting subject. So what we're going to get into is talking about some of the things that I would call cradle to grave costs when you do critical analysis. And we'll start off by just talking a little bit about lithium. The first thing that it talks about under the definition of lithium, and trust me, Wikipedia, just because I got it on the internet doesn't mean it's gospel truth. I have perfect skepticism over the internet as well. But under standard conditions, and this is a scientific fact, it's one of the lightest metals out there. It actually can float on top of most liquids, including water. It's one of only a few metals, a handful of metals that can float on top of water. I'm not talking like a hull made of it. I'm talking about a chunk of it, solid, can sit there and float on water. Not that you'd want to do that. But lithium is highly reactive and highly flammable. And for this reason, it's typically stored in mineral oil. So you've already got some limitations there that start to talk about, well, there's some special handling with lithium. Lithium never occurs freely in nature and instead appears only in compounds. That's an interesting fact. That means that you don't just go mine lithium like gold or silver, sometimes also pulled out of other materials, but you have to literally not only pull up the raw materials, but then refine it to get to the lithium and pull it out. And it can be mined in ore. It's harder to find in ore, but it can also be pulled out of brines and other muds and compounds or slurries and pulled out of there. But it adds more steps to the process. Therefore, it's not super cheap. Just like hydrogen, by the way, there's a parallel with hydrogen. There's tons of hydrogen in the universe. In fact, hydrogen is the most common element in the universe, but we don't just harvest it. We actually have to run it through an electrolyzer, a steam reformer, or something to pull the hydrogen away from other atoms and get pure hydrogen. Pretty similar to lithium. As a metal, you have to kind of pull it out of other compounds. It's present in ocean water. You can find lithium in ocean water. Unfortunately, it's in such minute quantities that you would probably have to drain the ocean and process it to get any substantial amount of lithium out of it. So not a good place to get it. It's not very common. I think one of the things that gets past everybody in this whole analysis is that lithium is pretty rare on the Earth. And we'll talk a lot in detail about exactly what that means in terms of reserves and things. But one of the ways that it's described in lithium is less common in the solar system than 25 of the first 32 chemical elements, even though the nuclei is very small and very light in weight. Lithium and its compounds have several industrial applications. This is interesting, including heat-resistant glass, ceramics, lithium grease, which I'm really familiar with lithium grease. It's some of the best stuff out there. Flux additives for iron, steel, and aluminum production, lithium batteries, and lithium-ion batteries. And these these uses that I just described consume more than 3/4 of all the lithium that is harvested or manufactured or processed worldwide across the globe. Now think about that. Teslas and other electric cars make up a fraction of 1% of the vehicles on the road worldwide today. The clean green technology of an electric car, there's such a small amount, and yet they take about a ton or a little over a ton in Tesla's case of lithium-ion batteries. Okay, we don't have many cars. They take a ton of batteries, and we're already using up 3/4 of the worldwide production just in the group of things that I mentioned that we produce. So if we got to 5% electric cars running off lithium batteries, we'd be sucking down way more lithium than we do now in terms of annual production. And we will go through the world's supply of finite lithium faster than we can produce it. What does that mean in economic terms? The price goes up. So unlike other things where there's a lot of it, like iron ore or something, and the more you can produce, the cheaper it gets because you get volume, you get more volume, you can produce more, you get economies of scale, you can ramp up production, get it done faster, better, more efficiently by making bigger plants. Lithium is just the opposite. When we start really taxing the natural resources and the natural sources of lithium, you can easily get to a point where you can't produce enough lithium to meet demand, and therefore price is going to go up. Lithium is already an expensive commodity, and it's going to get more and more expensive the more batteries we make. This concerns me as a hydrogen guy because hydrogen vehicles also need lithium batteries. So we have kind of a dilemma coming here, especially if we want to use all lithium batteries. I already said it can float on water. That was one of the more interesting points. Here's another really interesting one that you won't see a lot of things on the internet about lithium batteries catching on fire in cars. because most of the manufacturers pull that fact and pull the videos as fast as they get out there. But lithium will ignite and burn in oxygen when exposed to water or water vapors. So if you have a car with a lithium battery and you run over a piece of metal and it tears into the lithium battery, you will have a fire, guaranteed. And if the fire department doesn't realize it's a lithium battery, when they show up and start dumping water on the car, the fire will burn faster. It will actually make the fire worse, not better. You have to use chemicals on lithium to put the fire out, and unless the car is recognizable as a lithium-powered car, you may not know it, try and dump water on it, make the fire worse. Fortunately, here in Hawaii, the fire department's trained to respond to electric cars, because we try and train them, so that they know how to respond. But you don't dump water on a lithium battery fire or it gets worse. And the battery itself, when it ignites, it's pretty dramatic. If you want to go online and look at some nail tests as nails are driven through different battery types, you got to pay attention to what happens when you drive a nail through a little tiny lithium battery that's maybe 3 inches long and a ½ inch in diameter. It starts not a fire, but damn near an explosion that'll get your attention really quick. So safety is a big concern. As with alkaline metals, lithium fires are difficult to extinguish, requiring a dry powder fire extinguisher of the Class D type. So what are some of the other great things about lithium? Where does it come from? Well, of the top 8 countries in the world that produce lithium, in order, Chile is number 1 and China is number 2. Number 3 is Argentina. Number 4 is Australia. Number 5 is Canada. Number 6 is Portugal. And number 7 is Brazil. 8 is Zimbabwe. I didn't hear the United States in any of those, meaning, guess what? We import lithium from everybody else. We don't make a whole lot ourselves. Are there any reserves in the United States? They found some in North Carolina. They found some in Nevada, and I think some in Wyoming. But apparently the reserves in the United States are fairly minuscule, and if we included them, they'd be maybe 1 year worth of the total world current requirement for lithium across the whole planet. So what does this mean in terms of estimated reserves? Worldwide, it's estimated there are 14 million tons of lithium available for harvesting, and we currently use 32,500 tons a year to make all the batteries for our cell phones and our cars and everything. So that means we have about 431 years of lithium reserves if we harvested everything that we know we have now. And that assumes some of these are estimates. So it assumes that all of it's there, and maybe we'll find a little bit more. But if we increased the number of lithium batteries we use in cars appreciably, we would easily deplete, very easily deplete that 431 years and take it down to maybe 15 or 20 years. And after that, it's gone. And we may have better uses for lithium than running into batteries. And, you know, Tesla's got a great program. And I'm not here to slam Tesla. That's an awesome car. If you've ever been in one, or driven next to one, it's an impressive vehicle. And I'm not here to slam their product because it's really impressive. But if you think about what happens to your car after it gets down to about 80% battery capacity, the battery is no longer good for your car. So you're going to have to change it out. And how much does that cost? $8,000, $10,000? After you own your car for 5 years and it's a slick car, maybe it's worth putting another 10 grand into. What happens to that battery that you pull out? Well, fortunately for us, Elon Musk has thought about that, and he builds the wall, which is he takes the car batteries and sorts through all the individual cells that are in the car batteries, pulls the best ones out, and he puts them into an appliance that now becomes your uninterruptible power supply for your house, called the wall, and it helps your house keep going. Great use, great way to recycle the batteries. But now, what happens when it gets down to a threshold in your house you can't use anymore? Now you have to dispose of it. That's another big problem, disposing. So overall, the analysis by most folks, and this is from the Handbook of Lithium and Natural Calcium. Lithium is a comparatively rare element, and although it's found in many rocks and some brines, but it's always very low concentrations when you find it there. There are a fairly large number of both lithium minerals and brine deposits, but only comparatively few of them are actually or potentially commercial value. Many are very small and others are low in grade. Chile has the largest reserves by far of 7.5 million tons. And as I said before, as the demand in lithium increased during the Cold War, guess what it's used for? Nuclear weapons. You're competing with lithium because they use it in nuclear weapons still today. Even in all the modern nuclear weapons, not the old ones like we had during World War II or during the Manhattan Project, modern nuclear weapons require lithium. So that should tell you something there about the safety piece too.
Hey, well, there you go. You can go back to October of 2016 and pull that show up if you want to see the last couple minutes of it. But I wanted to go in there, and that vehicle that I showed when I was talking about the fire lithium fires, that was actually an accident on the mainland 2 days ago that killed two people when the tree left the road and hit a tree and caught on fire. And the fire department dumped 32,000 gallons of water on the vehicle. All that was left was the skeleton of the vehicle. Lithium is a really great product, but just like anything else, when you're trying, and I've said this before, when you have energy storage, you've got to treat it with respect. You've got to understand the technology that you have. And part of that is critical analysis, really, really, really doing your homework. You know, compact fluorescent light bulbs are a classic example of a bad decision. We decided to go with CFLs because they were great. They were energy efficient. They cut way down on the energy bill. They were supposed to last for a lot longer. Guess what? They're full of mercury. People throw them in their dumpster. Now they end up in your landfill and in your drinking water with mercury. Not such a good idea. And there were government subsidies for that. Bottom line, that's not good critical analysis. When it comes to energy specifically, and I would say even politics, especially around election season, I think we need to start doing a little bit more critical analysis. That's going to wrap it up for today on Stan Energy Man, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Aloha.